Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. I am Jason Podolin, your host, and you're here for episode number 42, and we're going to be speaking with Dane Jackson. Now, Dane Jackson may be not quite as recognizable as some of the names I've had on, like previous guest Jerome McGinley, but that doesn't make him any less respectable. Let's put it that way. Dane is a name that has come across my path countless times. I played against him in the AHL, remembered him with Rochester for sure. But since, Jared Smithson went out of his way to mention Dane as a mentor for him and as a role model in his interview. And Scott Nickel mentioned Dane Jackson in his interview. And Steve Kelly is somebody that speaks highly of Dane Jackson. And so this name, Dane Jackson, keep coming up again and again and again. And then I found out that he was also the associate head coach for University of North Dakota, which has been on my radar lately because of the Mitchell Miller saga that has unfolded in the hockey world in the past weeks. So as hockey works, one of my ex-teammates by the name of Eric Healy connected Dane and I because Dane and Eric Healy played in Manchester together. And he said, you know what? Talk to Dane if you want to hear something about Mitchell. So Dane agreed to speak with me. And we do talk about Mitchell a little bit towards the end of the interview. I thought it was important to ask Dane what he felt, like essentially a character reference for Mitchell Miller. Because if you look in the mainstream media, it's tough to get that side of the story. And I think it's a really relevant side of the story. And it's something that I've spoken publicly about is that, what is Mitchell like now? What are his coaches saying about him now? What are his teammates saying about him now? And if they're saying good things about him, then, I believe there should be some empathy for what he's going through and that there should be a different path to redemption than maybe what's happening right now. So I digress. This is about Dane Jackson, not about Mitchell Miller, and it's about celebrating Dane because Dane has been a captain almost everywhere he went. And when you have somebody that gets bestowed the honor of being a captain, usually it is for very good reason. And with Dane, it was. He was a guy that brought a level of positivity to the room. He was a guy that carried himself with professionalism, and he wanted the best for his team and those around him. And it kept him in the game a long time. It allowed him to play 45 games in the NHL. He was a third-round draft pick of the Vancouver Canucks. And he also played over 600 games in the A on his way to becoming an assistant coach under Bruce Boudreau. So Dane had the opportunity to win a Calder Cup in the A with Rick with Torts in Rochester, and he also had the chance to play for Pat Quinn. He mentions his time with Bruce Boudreau, so he was dotted. His experience was dotted with top level coaches and people that recognized him as being somebody who could lead men. And I think that's an amazing honor to be bestowed on anyone. So we have a great conversation here about leadership, about mentorship, about all of the good stuff that really, I think, encapsulated and tells the story of Dane Jackson, which is why on the ticker I wrote leadership, coaching, and mentorship, because I think when most people hear the word Dane Jackson that have known him in the past, those are the words that will come out. So without further ado, I bring you an amazing conversation for coaches, for athletes, and for parents alike with Dane Jackson. All right, here we are back live with Up My Hockey for episode 42, and we have Dane Jackson. And Dane, first of all, I guess I should thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on. Always good to talk hockey, especially with a fellow BC.
Yeah, and a fellow American League plug, as you called yourself, I think, on the text message. So I'm right there with you.
Absolutely.
funny how this thing goes, because I'll just give the listeners a backstory here, because sometimes, I mean, my network is big because I was a suitcase. I joke about that a lot. I played all over the place. One of the benefits was getting to meet a ton of great people, whether in the locker room or from a coaching staff perspective. You and I never sat in the same locker room together, but one of our mutual teammates did, Eric Healy. And Heels has been a good buddy of mine, and his son's going through it now, and the journey to get to where he wants to go and to D1. And anyway, so he connected us. So I thank Heels for that. And here we are now having an interview like 3 days later. So it's pretty cool the way the system works these days.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's a good scorer, boy, and a good friend.
Yeah, he could definitely do some cool things with the puck, and you would have put it in the net. That's for sure. I would like to start, because this is, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to anything that Up My Hockey's about, but it's kind of about the path, and it's about the journey, and it's about each guy's way for how they get there, and some of these intangibles that maybe go outside of what type of a skater you are, or what type of puck handler you are, and so I like to get back into it, and maybe start at your days there in Vernon, just because, I mean, that's where I'm from. You played here. You're not that much older than me, but older than me enough that I was still that kid in the stands and was able to watch you, and be a fan in that scenario. So can you talk about your time in Vernon there and what that season was like?
Yeah, well, actually, it was kind of an interesting lead into getting there, Jay. I was really close to going to play in Seattle. Seattle had their training camp right in Castlegar. I think Spokane's was down in Trail, and Seattle's was in my town. And I was really close to going to play there, and I'd actually gone and played over in Europe at kind of a Western Canadian team, I think, and we played in Czechoslovakia against different places. And when I came home to the Vancouver airport, the guys from Seattle were there. They were going to come take me down. I still hadn't really decided if I was going to go to Vernon or go to Seattle. So that was a tough conversation with those guys, but pretty naive, just thinking back about going there. No promises to even make the team there, and just kind of went and battled. I was lucky to have a couple guys from Castlegar. Darcy Martini was there, and but it was a great experience. Ernie Gear was our coach, and we had a really good team that ended up winning the BC League, and a lot of guys went on and got scholarships. Dallas Drake was probably one of our best players, another BC boy there from Rosslyn. So Darcy and Dallas and I would go over and travel back and forth, and I think Darcy's old Nova or something like that. But yeah, it was really great learning curve, and just kind of first time for me kind of getting away, and in my grade 12 year to go play for Mel List was our owner. And
right, yeah. So you remember, so back were you playing in Castlegar? Is that where your minor hockey was playing, like the year before?
Yeah. I was born in Winnipeg and then played in Sherwood Park for about 5 years. So when I was till I was about 10 years old, and then when I was 10, came to Castlegar, and Travis Green was on same exact age as I. So Travis and I played all the way up, and till I was about till my grade 12 year, and then I left Castlegar. I played a couple of years in the KJHL for the Castlegar Rebels, and then went over to hit the big time in the BC.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's a great background there, especially with Travis Green. I played with his brother in Penticton, and then Travis was a Spokane Chief too. So he left like just a few years before I was there. So definitely have connections to the Green family. And another was Steve Junker around Castlegar when you were there?
Yeah, Junks was just a couple years younger than us, and, so we'd always skate with them. We'd get skates in the summer, and then actually played with Steve 1 year in Rochester. Actually, when we won the Calder Cup, Steve kind of came and played with us a little bit as well.
Oh, that's super cool. I played with Steve in Mannheim, and then also he was a Chief there as well. So we crossed paths a little bit. What? How was that decision for you then? So you leave minor hockey in Castlegar, obviously on a few people's radar if the Western League's calling and the BCJ's calling. And you said you didn't really know what the choice was. So you weren't definitively labeling yourself as a college guy. You were entertaining the WHL route.
Yeah, no, it was actually a bit of a battle in the Jackson household. I think my dad thought it'd be better to go play major junior, and my mom was pretty, education based, and thought that was super important. Not near as much information as there is now. There was no internet then, but some guys that had played in Castlegar before me, Jim Smith had played in Denver, and Kelly Hurd had gone to Michigan Tech. So I knew some guys, I knew a little bit about it that way. Steve Bozak had played at Northern Michigan, so we kind of looked up to Steve a little bit. And one of the Walt Kyle was a good assistant coach at Northern Michigan and kind of knew about some of us kids in Castlegar through Bozak, and had kind of done a good job of explaining to me a little bit about what college hockey was about, and was always sending me stuff. So that's kind of what piqued my interest to go that way. And I ended up going on a recruiting trip to Northern Michigan and with Dallas Drake about Christmas time that year. And they ended up offering Dallas. They didn't offer me right away. And they picked the right guy, obviously, but I ended up going to North Dakota in the end.
Right. So that season, you mentioned Ernie Gare, who it's crazy how much our circles cross, because he actually helped out with my Pee Wee provincial team.
Nice.
He would come out and skate with us, and now his grandson is on a team that I assistant coach, Shanahan. So it's
nice.
Definitely a small world when it comes to that. And he was very good coach back in his day, and obviously hockey is in that family's blood. With your scenario there, getting into the BCJ and having Mel Liss, and that team was, it was a good team. And I know that you guys won that year. And I think it was right around then when they started to be like a perennial good team, they were known for their players. Did you have any idea at all that you were going to on the NHL radar at that point, like that you would end up getting drafted where you did?
Yeah. The first time I'd ever even really heard about it at all was, I think kind of I remember getting the hockey news or something. You'd get the updates from there. But Kerry Eads, one of the assistant coaches at North Dakota, had called me, and he said, "Hey, you're ranked 45th on the NHL's scouting watch list or something like that." And he'd also kind of talked about starting to recruit me. So that was a pretty cool phone call. I remember, and that was the first time I ever heard about it, and that was in December. And then I kind of learned a little bit more about it then, and a couple teams came and talked to me and interviewed me along the way. And you knew that was kind of on the radar. But I think back then there wasn't, I think at that time I was the highest kid ever picked from the BC League. So it wasn't really, a lot of kids didn't get picked there. And it was definitely new to me. Like I had, it's not like it is now where it's big fanfare. Like I remember I was shooting pucks with Travis in my backyard on the day of the draft. And my mom yelled, it was in Montreal, but I wasn't going to go there. And my mom yelled out and said, "Hey, Dan, the phone's for you." And I ran in there, and it was, I think it was Darcy Rhoda that had called and said, "Hey, we just drafted you with I think 45th overall or whatever it was to the Vancouver Canucks." So I was pretty excited.
That is wild. Yeah, super cool. And especially being a hometown boy, well, not hometown, but home province boy, and having them grab you there in that spot. So that was the highest at the time. That's really wild.
I'm not certain of that, but I think so. Like I think Jason Marshall came right after me and was obviously much higher than I was, but yeah. I don't know. I guess it was just kind of wasn't scouted a lot. So I don't know how that happened, or I wasn't the greatest player, but I don't know. It was a cool experience and really, really exciting for me to get drafted by Vancouver.
Did you, once you found out that you were on that watch list, did that change anything for you? Like, did you, I don't know, was there any type of mental difference for you in your game?
Yeah, not really. I don't think, I think just always been a guy that went and played and, competitive guy. So I don't think it really made me play any harder or do anything any differently. It was just, I'd always kind of been from a small town. And, when we played the big teams from, even when we played, a lot of times teams from the Okanagan or the Lower Mainland, like we would lose pretty good. We just didn't have quite as many players and stuff. So, when you played against those teams, you're all kind of fired up to play your best and try to show well. But a lot of times we didn't do very well. So it was, I don't think I'd been to a couple of the BC Cup kind of camp, best ever camps, whatever they called it back in the day. Yeah. And I did all right, but I was never really a super top guy coming up, I don't think.
When the recruiting process started, and now maybe that helps you in doing what you're doing now, because I'm sure you're part of the recruitment process a little bit when they come on site there. What was that experience like for you? How many places did you visit before you made your decision?
Yeah, I went to Northern Michigan, and those guys did a great job. And then I went to Michigan Tech a little bit because Kelly Hurd was already there, and he kind of did a good job talking about it there. And then I went, and I'd always kind of wanted to go to North Dakota. I remember reading in my Sports Illustrated I used to get about Tony Herkus and Bob Joyce winning the national title in '87. And I said, "Oh, that looks pretty cool." And, that's how I had kind of heard about North Dakota. And then I tried to, ask different guys about it. And then when they came to recruit me, I felt pretty honored.
Is that something now? I know people ask me, how do you get recognized, or what's the right way to go about things? And people are asking about advisors and this and that. Obviously, it's a it's a business for the universities to find the right guy.
Yeah.
If you were a player now, and let's say some teams were calling, but UND wasn't, do you think it's okay to write a letter or to pick up the phone and make a phone call, or how do you feel about that type of advice?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I still think it's great to get interest, if a kid likes your program, that's good. Obviously we're very fortunate in North Dakota that there's going to be a lot of kids that have interest. I always still say, Jason, you build your name and your reputation on what you do every day. Like sometimes as a kid, you don't maybe understand that much, but so much of what I want to do and find out about a kid is when I'm talking to their coaches, I'm talking to their trainers when I go and watch practice, trying to talk to people at the school, what kind of kid they are, and I really think you might write me a really nice letter, but if I go and talk to the school principal and they say, Jason Podolin is not a very good kid, you're probably not coming to North Dakota, so I really like to talk to kids about, what you do every day is what builds your brand and your name. And if you're doing the right things and your coach relies on you and your teachers say, yeah, the kid's always here and he's a good worker and a good kid in class. And the more people you talk to and you just keep hearing that same thing about, yeah, kid's driven, he's focused, he's a worker, good teammate, he's kind of team first. To me, that's stuff that really kind of resonates. So, I think some people think they can kind of fool you or whatever, but I think in the end, what you do, what you bring every day is your reputation and how you kind of build your brand.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I guess my question was more or less assuming that maybe there's a kid out there that's maybe doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And maybe not getting noticed, and maybe he is putting in that work every day.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that phone call or maybe that letter, just to let a person know, hey, I'm interested, and I do have what it takes, and I'm going to make your team better. It doesn't hurt, I guess, is all I'm saying. I think even in this day and age, like a kid that's willing to be on the phone with you is probably a little bit of I don't know. Yeah. He's got a little bit different moxie to him, right? To even be able to handle that phone call. I think that says something about a guy.
Yeah, no question. That's I didn't mean to dismiss that. And you're absolutely right. Because nowadays I can go on Instat and just, any punch in a kid's name and I can watch, 10 games of them right away, so, sometimes sometimes there's good kids out there. There's only kind of 3 of us, like the Western Hockey League. I'm sure they have, 10 scouts or something that are out there and some player personnel guys and general managers. We, the NCAA rules just allow like our head coach and our 2 assistants to be out watching kids. So we rely a lot on kind of a network of alumni, of NHL scouts, of coaches, things like that. And then obviously now a lot on video to try to, find these kids. So yeah, you're exactly right. Sometimes if I just get I get a nice email or a nice letter or whatever, or a nice call, I'll for sure take the time to, watch a couple games and you see what you see.
Cool. Yeah, Dan Wildfong, head coach down there in the NAHL, has had a lot of success and had a lot of success in placing athletes in the D1 program too. We had an interesting talk about the recruitment process and about advisors, and he thought that there's always a place, let's say, for them, but he thinks the biggest advocate has to be the coach, and that's we kind of agreed on that scenario. You want your coach where you're at, who sees you every day, who sees what player you are, to go to bat for you, I shouldn't say go to bat for you, but he should be the one making the call too on your behalf, or at least answering the phone call when somebody calls.
Yeah. And we talked to Dan, he does a good job. He does a really good job. Like he's a long way from us, and we don't get down a lot to see the North American League down there in Texas. But I'll tell you what, he's been around a long time, always has good teams. And when you call in and just check in and he starts rifling off a name or 2 on his team, or sometimes he'll be talking about, yeah, we played, so-and-so, and this kid always plays hard and competes, and it's hard to play against, it really gets your attention. So no question, I think you build trust with your coaches, and that's going to go a long way.
That's awesome, though, even that integrity for Dan to be like that, because it is a trust thing, and it's one thing that I do preach around here with the players that I work with and that want to move on. It's like, you have to be trusted, right? And even in that scenario, like for Dan, if he's just completely blowing smoke all the time, or just pumping, maybe his own guys' tires, and that doesn't maybe work, right? You lose a little bit of authenticity and integrity with that. But the fact that he's just telling you what he thinks is the real deal says something about Dan and the program he's running there. I think he's a straightforward kind of guy, and what you see is what you get with him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's he's been outstanding, and he's definitely, you always check into guys, but when certain guys call or say something, there's some guys that you really probably take a longer listen to for sure than others.
When so you end up making the jump, you end up getting drafted third round, must be feeling pretty good about yourself, and you roll into University of North Dakota as a freshman, and as usually is the case with freshmen, there's a pretty big learning curve there. I mean, life is new and different. You had the experience of being on your own in Vernon, so that wasn't completely new, but a campus at North Dakota is a little different than playing hockey in Vernon. So what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I remember my mom and dad, they drove me out. I didn't have a car for the first 2 years. So, they kind of dropped me off in front of Walsh Hall, and they said, all right, I kind of took my gear out and my luggage, a few bags, and they said, all right, see you later. My mom was crying, and my dad just said, all right, you're on your own now. You got to go. And they drove away. And I remember just kind of walking in there going, holy crap, this is scary all of a sudden. I was super excited. This is scary. And you go for that first few minutes, you kind of walk up there and you're standing in line, and just as I was checking in, Dick Ward was checking in as well, and I just knew his name from the list of other freshmen that were coming in, and I kind of introduced myself, and he helped kind of show me where we were going. Brad Pascal was my roommate in my first year in college, and we were buddies. And then all the other guys meet guys in the team, so it really got kind of a little bit easier there. After those first few minutes of kind of terror, going, what have I got myself into?
Right.
I was just looking back, like you don't, there's just so much. Like we talked a lot about kids too, about like one thing is if you're physically ready, another thing is if your game is ready enough, but there's so much too about just kind of your maturity as a person. I was just kind of a young guy from a small town. I probably could have used another year at junior just to figure things out, just to kind of, as far as, having the presence and the time management and the understanding of how the world works. I had a lot to learn. So, I had a lot of tough times. I remember calling home and having tough conversations with my mom and dad about, if I'd only played one game out of two. And they're like, my dad would be like, what do you mean you only played one game? And I was like, well, guys are super good here, Dad. They're big and really good and older. And I'm working and I'm trying my hardest to get in this lineup, and end up kind of battling my way in. The second half became a regular player, but it was a hard jump. A lot for me was just for everything new, everything, living on your own, and living, like you did mention, I lived in the Billets, and that was a good intermediate step, but there was still just lots to figure out about how to, do everything, how to get around, how to manage your relationships with people, and how to, build trust. Like I see now some of the guys that come in here, and they're just so, some of these young guys, they're so professional right away. They're going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, and they're at the rink at 7 early, and they're stretching out, and they're doing all this stuff, getting ready for practice. And I was like, God, I didn't learn that stuff till much later in my career, about how important that was to, all the little details of, being a good pro and what it takes to kind of prepare yourself. And, Johnny Taves was playing here my first year at North Dakota. And I think I learned a few things from Johnny about his approach and his professionalism and just kind of his mental toughness about how he handled things. So when you got young guys there teaching you things yourself, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. When you go back to that first year, and it looks like you didn't experience it, at least from a stat line in Vernon. Anytime you make a step up, right? You level up, there's an adjustment period. Guys are either older or bigger or stronger or better or whatever the case may be, and you kind of need to figure it out. And sometimes sometimes you have to figure it out real quick, right? Or else you're not going. That's usually the way the NHL works. But if that was your first kind of hint of adversity, or like real adversity, what was the hardest time adjusting? Was it trying to get in the lineup, or was it life outside of the rink?
Yeah, I think just kind of having a realization about how many really good players there are. When you went to Vernon, you realize, okay, there's good players, but we had a really good team, and I got to play with really good guys. So we were winning a lot of games. So it wasn't too bad. Even at the start, I was, battled a little bit, but it didn't go too bad there. But like when I first went to North Dakota, I just kind of go, wow, there's like you might think for a little bit, like I like to believe I'm a fairly humble guy, but you get drafted and you still think, okay, I should be a pretty good player. And you're just going against all these other guys. Like we had, even my freshman class, there were guys that were just really, really good players that were first and second round picks, and you're going, wow, I got to battle just for my ice in my own class right here. So yeah, I think that was kind of just kind of getting your mind around, and I think it all goes back to just workload, in my opinion. You just say, if you're not quite good enough, or you're not quite strong enough, or you're not quite fast enough, or you can't handle hard passes on your backhand, you better work at it. You better dig in. You better get a coach to hammer pucks at you in your backhand so you can handle them every time. Because otherwise, you're screwing up in practice, and coach is putting you into a lower line the next day. So you just kind of learn that, hey, there's no need to panic, right? But you go to work, and that's the biggest thing I've always found in life is if you put in extra time and prepare, people around you will kind of see that. You'll get better, for one, but for two, they'll also kind of see that you care enough to kind of do that extra, and that you're driven enough that you'll do what it takes to make a difference.
Yeah. And there's that, I've studied quite a bit in the brain, is that the reticular activating system, the RAS system. And that's the one where, like, you're going to go buy, maybe you're thinking about buying a new truck. And then all of a sudden now you're driving down the street and you see that truck all over the place because your brain's actually like noticing it and it's tuning into that. Same thing works. I think the same thing works with coaches, right? You watch that guy trying to pick up the pass again and again and again and again, and he's working on it. In the game, you see the time when he actually connects with that pass, and you're like, yes, it's working for him. It actually helps the perception too, and people see you a little differently, and they see things differently because of the work you're putting in, and it does nothing but help you. That's for sure. Two
I
questions.
also, just on that point, Jason, I also kind of think I talk about that a lot with our guys about there's two things. You get physically better at handling hard passes than your backhand. But the second thing is you feel good about your preparation. If you had a great week of preparation and great practices, and now you're coming down and you get a rocket pass on a 2-on-1 long pass, you kind of feel like, I think you just feel mentally better about yourself, that you've kind of done the work versus, walking into a test where you haven't gotten all your classes or do all your reading, and you kind of feel, I'm not really prepared for this thing. And so mentally, you're not really feeling very strong. So big believer in that preparedness thing, and something we talk a lot about with our young guys.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, which leads to confidence. That's another thing with the leveling up thing that I've talked about too with a lot of my guys, is that when you do level up, like a lot of times we associate confidence with success or results. That's the most natural thing to associate it to. But what happens when you're in a new environment and you're not even playing, right? You haven't scored the goal yet. You haven't got on the first line. You don't have any results. So like the confidence then comes from the things you're talking about, the work you're putting in, the preparation you're putting in, right? The belief in yourself that you've done what it takes to be in that position and to earn that position. So it's nice to be 44 and be able to talk about this stuff. As I know, you sound like you're from the same bread, or maybe you got a little bit quicker than me, but boy, I wish I understood some of this stuff a little bit earlier in my career, kind of, right? The value of that preparation.
That I know you had Scotty Nickel, my buddy Scotty Nickel, on, and he's a development guy. Well, he started as development with Nashville, and I just think, I know we've had some guys, and I've sat in on some of the discussions when Scotty's talking to guys, just to hear his approach and his messages. And I think it's such a good thing these NHL teams are doing to help a lot of these young guys on the stuff away from the game, about their professionalism and preparation, and not really so much about the technical skill, but just about how to be a good pro and how to manage things. And it's a great adaptation the National League teams have done to kind of, instead of just drafting a kid and kind of hope he gets better, really putting a lot of time in the development and helping him with a lot of that off ice stuff, the time management and everything else.
Yeah, for sure. When you were a freshman there, was it a coach? Do you remember any specific moment or any maybe moment even to breaking? Like, it's amazing how many guys I talk on here that, Jared Smithson comes to mind from recency bias, where he had a couple moments where it was like in junior, even, where it was like this close to just packing it in, and then ends up, persevering, getting through it somehow. And every time he made that choice to get through it, he got a little bit stronger and ends up having a 700 game NHL career at the end of it. Was that kind of a crystallized moment for you that freshman year where you got through it and made you better?
Yeah. And I specifically remember, like, I always try to think about this now as a coach, because I remember one of our assistant coaches, Kerry Eads, kind of grabbing me just before I went home at Christmas. He goes, "Hey, you're starting to build some trust with our head coach, Gino Gasparini. Like, you're starting to do the right things, and you're playing hard." And, just gave me a little bit of some positive, reaffirmation, basically. And it really kind of gave me a lot of confidence, So again, guys got to earn it. You can't just go and tell guys they're doing great when they're not. But when you kind of feel like people are watching and seeing what you're doing and the work you're putting in, that for me was a was kind of a big step when you kind of earn your stripes a little bit, and coaches are kind of telling you, hey, the head coach can trust you now, so you got to get a chance to kind of take a step forward here.
I think that's an interesting maybe word to unpack there, and maybe how you perceive that as a player, and maybe how you would describe that now as a coach. But like for the players out there listening, when a coach says you've developed the trust, or you've earned his trust or gained his trust, like what does that mean to a player? How would a player go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it's two things, in my opinion, Jason. It's one is on the ice. So, obviously every young guy wants to score goals and get assists, right? A lot of guys measure their game on how much offensive production they have. I think as a coach, a lot of times you measure a player, some guys are measured if they're on the power play or high-end offensive guys. Yeah, they have to score. But I know in our staff, we are going to often put a lot of emphasis on just how a guy can manage a puck. Can a guy win battles? Can he advance a puck through the neutral zone? Can he get pucks out? Can he sustain some offensive zone time just by, being strong enough or smart enough to put it to the proper area? So we can kind of rely on him that he's going to be a solid contributor to kind of play within our system. Can he take the instruction of our system and put it in his game? So that's kind of half of it. The other part for me is, I talk to our young guys, just, again, kind of gaining credibility and reliability with our staff by how you do things. You might be really good on the ice, but if we're getting calls that you're missing a lot of classes, and if you're always the last guy into a meeting, or if you're not really prepared to practice and don't know the drills or what's going on, that's another level of reliability that a coach kind of goes, not sure this. I don't know if I can put this guy on the ice at a critical moment, because he just hasn't shown me that he's really dedicated or cares enough or professional enough to kind of to make that important to him. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of guys have to learn, kind of the two sides of on ice kind of reliability, and then just being a reliable kind of sharp guy that takes care of business, and making sure you do all the things that are expected of you before you are going to do your fun things.
How big is it? How big is intention in your mind for these players, and to let their intention be known? Meaning, if somebody shows up at your program, and maybe how he wants to contribute, how he sees himself contributing, or maybe even where he wants to end up after your program.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to back that up by saying then being accountable to saying that, like the actions that it's going to take for that to happen. But do you like when players kind of let you know, or are confident enough to say, this is where I want to go and I'd love some help getting there?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. I think that's a really big deal that you kind of have a plan. We had, I'm blanking on his first name, but he's a inspirational speaker down in the States. Was I think a Navy SEAL and stuff. This Goggins, and he came.
Oh, you had Dave Goggins in there?
Yeah, he came and talked to our guys, and he was impressive, because he came in and guys were just kind of sitting in our room, and I believe it was the year we won the national title, so we had a lot of good players, and he picked up Paul Ledoux, who was sitting right in the front, and he said, "Hey, what are you thinking about right now?" And he was kind of like going, I didn't really have a great answer. And, his whole thing is like, you wake up with a purpose to your day if you want to get ahead, and that question you asked just kind of jogged my memory back to that, because that was his whole thing. It's like, you don't just wake up and, hope the wind's going to blow you in the right direction and you'll do well, right? You wake up with a plan, you wake up with a purpose, and it's kind of day to day, but you keep stacking up those good days and you get to where you want to go. And, I think of Johnny Taves, like he was the very best of being intentional about what he was doing, and he was the first guy I ever heard talk about, say, hey, my day starts before is how early I go to bed, because then I can get up early. I'll be that much sharper. I'll be that much more ready, and I never had really even thought about that much, that my next day is going to depend on how early I go to bed and how good a sleep I get, so yeah, that's a great point. And it's I think a huge part of, like, when I look back at all the guys that have come through North Dakota, that, some of the guys that are some of the very best, the vast majority of them are very focused, intentional guys that just are taking they're skilled, really good players, but they have a purpose, and not all of them, but a lot of them, they take their great amount of ability that they have, the God-given ability, and they make it because of their drive and their discipline, and their focus on a day-to-day basis about how they kind of nurture that to become some of the best players in the world.
Right. And I guess where I was going with that, or leading a little bit, is that inner circle. And maybe I'll have a little backstory with myself. back when we played, and you were a little bit before my time, but I always kind of felt, and maybe it was more me and my personality, that it was an us versus them when it came to players and the coaching staff. There was the guys in the room, then there's the coaches. And I think that the modern era now is trying to bridge that gap as close as they can get, you know, that we're collectively pushing the rock from the same side. Right. And I think because of me having that perception, or whether that was real or not, I didn't generally reach out. Like, I didn't have a conversation with an assistant coach saying, hey, like, I want to get to the show. Like, you know, what do I got to do? Like, work, like, I wasn't either brave enough, or I was too proud, or whatever the scenario was, where I never asked that. And that's one of my regrets of, like, not including others in my journey is why I kind of mentioned that. Like, I think that intentionality of letting it be known, like you in your position, I would assume you must love helping guys make their dreams come true. I mean, that's probably why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a great point. And you know, I think my first year of coaching with Bruce Boudreau in the American League in Manchester, our staff was we had a saying, it's we, us, and our. We always say that to our guys. You know, it's not about you guys or us. You know, it's we, us, and our, about how we do everything. And I know I always try to make a point of saying, hey, it's not, you know, I run our penalty kill here, and it's not like, oh, we had a bad night. It's, hey, I didn't prepare you guys well enough. Maybe you didn't execute well enough, but this is all on us together. And great point by you to say, you know, to ask for that help takes a bit of courage. I think you referenced earlier, and it does. And it's a huge thing that we start talking about right in the recruiting process. Is, you know, one of the reasons that we think it should want to come to North Dakota is because of the development we do, like the kind of day to day. We got a lot of time here in your day, you know, where you know, the ice is always open, and there's, you know, there's always video to be looked at and stuff to do together. There's always extra time in the gym, and everybody's kind of willing to help you. There's so much facilities and so much kind of staff to help, but kids have to really kind of reach out, and it's kind of, you know, it's on the kid to come to you and say, hey, I'll pass you pucks all day long, but, you know, you got to set up a time and say, hey, let's do it, you know. And really good point by you that it's such a big deal that you kind of, you know, you get a plan to it, and then you know, Dave Hackstraw, our old head coach, used to always say that. Like, so once you say something, and you got to do it. Like, if you tell a coach, hey, I'm going to meet you at 8 a.m. to shoot pucks, you know, you better be there, right? So it's kind of, I think it's a good thing for, you know, when you start saying things out loud, or, you know, have a meeting with your coach and say, I want to do this. Well, that's fine. But, you know, once we put pen to paper and laid out a plan for you, you know, then I'm going to start holding you to it, and you got to stick with it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's amazing. Even like, I remember my conversation with Brad Larson, assistant coach in Columbus. Yeah. And he said, even at that level, like, when guys will come in and say whatever, they're complaining about minutes, right? Or they want more responsibility. And he says, you know, when guys come in, you have to have answers for them. That's the new age hockey, right? You need to have answers for players. But he's like, it's amazing when you tell them what they need to do, how many guys will stop doing it after the first week or after the second week, you know, even at that level. So, like, that accountability quotient, even at the pro levels, may be lacking a little bit. And so it's hard, I guess is all I'm saying. It's hard. It's real, and it's hard. And even that accountability side is something nice to get some support with at times. I think, and I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, but part of that for me, I think, was a bit of the culture just with hockey of being like, you're kind of grown up being tough, or thinking you're tough, right? And because you're a tough individual and you're a hockey player, in quotes, maybe you don't need help, or maybe you shouldn't be a guy who asks for help, whether it be on the ice with your skill development, or whether it be off the ice with something that's going on, right? We just were kind of, I think it was bred into us just to deal with it. Do you see that changing in an athlete, or do you think it's kind of still there because of the way hockey is?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I look back at myself, and I know sometimes you'd sweep things under the rug, right? Because you think, oh, be mentally tough and just deal with it or whatever. And something that I probably could have been better. I think I got better as I got older, a little more confident, but definitely just going through school and stuff where you think you have to handle stuff on your own. Whereas that I think guys are definitely they're different than I think how we were, where they have they know people are there for them, and they utilize it, and they are kind of more intentional about it. So I think that's been a big deal. One of the things that we do here a lot at North Dakota is now we practice in the morning. We used to always practice about 3 p.m, and so we do skill sessions in the morning, and that's when I found you really have a great chance to kind of build relationships with guys. It's because when you're investing in the game with them, and you're out there skating with them and shooting pucks and playing games, guys kind of realize that it's a little bit more less about what you said about coach and player, and now it's just two guys out there just trying to get better. And you're fooling around a little bit, and you're hitting crossbars and you're betting and stuff, Gatorades and stuff like that. And I think that's when you have a chance to, and you referenced it a little bit earlier, a chance to kind of shape guys, because obviously we hope every guy that comes to North Dakota goes and plays in the NHL. They all want to, and a lot of them are draft picks, and they should have that goal. But we also know that there's probably 15% of them are going to go on and play in the NHL. So now that I'm a dad and a 50-year-old guy, you realize how important it is for these guys to learn a little bit of discipline, some focus, some hard work, all those type of things. And that's what's really going to lead them to live full lives, by whether it's being a teacher or a business owner or whatever it is. It's the kind of those values that we're learning through hockey. We all think we're playing all this time to get to the NHL, and that's great, but so few guys really do. But you realize one of the real gifts of the game is the relationships you have, but also the stuff that you learn, and how you get mentally tough, and how you get a little more discipline, and how you get a little more humble and team first, because you realize how hard it is, and it helps with the rest of life.
Yeah, I mean, that accountability outside of yourself is, I think, one of the greatest blessings of any team sport. And obviously I'm closest to hockey, and you are too. And I think hockey is a real family type environment, there's something real special about it. And you're right, because not everybody can have it as a career. And you and I were lucky to be able to call it a career for a while and to get paid to do it. But a lot of these guys that do leave the sport at some point, they're starting. I know a lot of employers locally and elsewhere that actually want guys that have played, because it's hard to teach the things that hockey teaches, outside of the skill set of it, obviously. So while you're going through it, you don't really get it. You don't really know what you're picking up, but there is so many virtues from being a part of something greater than yourself, and the success of hockey is not a strong link sport. Some of them are, it's more of a weak link sport, right? Like, you can't have the best player in NCAA and it doesn't mean you're going to win a title. That doesn't work that way, right? Like, you have to have it strong top to bottom. And because of that, it really teaches that selflessness and that togetherness. And I absolutely love that about hockey.
Yeah, for sure.
With your program there, and well, actually, let's go with you back to you and you graduating there. So you move on. Did you end up wearing a C for UND when you? Well,
I was an assistant captain, and that was it. Yeah, we had I think Dave Haxtell was our captain at the time, and was a really good 2-year captain here.
Right. Okay. So you did wear a letter by the time you left, because I read in your bio there at UND that you ended up wearing. It said you captained 5 teams. Is that with an A, or is that with the C, or is that combined?
Yeah, that was in the American League. I did. I guess I was lucky enough to be captain in Syracuse and Rochester and Lowell and Manchester. I think those are all those places in the American League. So yeah,
wow. Syracuse. That was I see that right. That was your first season there. That was Hamilton. Well, Hamilton moved, I guess, and then they went, and then that franchise went to Syracuse.
Yeah. I was a pretty young guy. I guess I was about 24, 25 then. And we had a couple of years there, and I was in the third year of my contract with Vancouver. And Jack Mack, who didn't like me very much at the start, because he called me a college puke, because I don't think he was a big fan of college guys. But I kind of, whatever, just went and worked and battled a little bit. And then, by my third year, he made me a captain. So that was a pretty big honor coming from Jack, because he was, we're so sad to see him go, but he was a good man. He taught in his own way, sometimes kind of gruff, but once you kind of knew that you were a battler and played hard for the team, he had a lot of respect for you, and he taught me a lot.
Just want to take the short break from the conversation with Dane Jackson to thank you for choosing to spend your time with me and my guests. I know this is continuing to grow. You guys are sharing and talking about it, and I continue to get great feedback from those of you who are finding value in the show. So thanks for choosing to subscribe and choosing to download and listen and spend time with us here. And if you want to know more, if you're a player or a parent, about how I can support you in your journey to wherever it is you want to go, you can visit upmyhockey.com. That's where you can find my programs. I've developed a program, an Up My Mindset program called my Mindset Master Series that walks players through the 10 beliefs I believe are essential for hockey players to be their best. I also have a championship character course I believe there's no time like yesterday to be working on our character, whether we're young, old, or just starting out. That this is a conversation that we should all be having with our players, and the course is an awesome way to open up that conversation. There's also, that's where you also get merchandise too. A lot of you guys have been asking where I get my t-shirts from and where you can get them. So merchandise is available at myhockey.com as well. So go check us out there. And without further ado, I will bring us back to our interview with Dane Jackson. What do you think endeared him to you, and how, how did you get that letter, and what did that mean to you?
Yeah, I think, obviously you're learning what's important to every coach, right? Every coach is a little bit different, and that's fine. And I think Jack really appreciated team first guys, and he appreciated kind of grit and toughness, so I realized that I think, right or wrong, back in those days, back in 1992, Jack kind of equated guys that were college guys as soft guys, not really physically tough, or I don't know, maybe or not mentally tough. I'm not sure. But I think I just had to kind of, played hard and fought sometimes. And mainly, I think just showed up and competed in a lot of those days when you're playing 3 and 3s and it's hard. And I think he just respected the fact that I was, super competitive and was always worried about the team. And yeah, I don't know. It meant a lot to kind of go from a guy that he was scratching early on because he thought you were too soft to kind of earning your way to, when he gives you the C. That was cool.
No, that is cool. And everything I've heard about you, Dane, is that you are a humble guy and you're a grateful guy. And I think that's part of what it means to be a good leader too. So me putting you on the spot there with that question, you were kind of dancing around it a little bit, and I was going to maybe call you out on it. But you mentioned that one word. I think you finally gave yourself like some real credit and used an adjective calling yourself competitive. I think that word in and of itself is a deal maker or breaker for athletes.
Yeah.
And I think if we can, bring that competitiveness out in us the best we can, whatever it has that we have inside of us, it does nothing but help us in this game. Can you maybe expand on how you feel like competitiveness help you, or how you probably are endeared to guys that are competitive too, and maybe what that word means to you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't think any athlete says they're not competitive. I used to go into coaches' offices and ask about guys, is he competitive? And, every coach would say, yeah, he's competitive. But then I started asking it differently. I said, okay, if you have 20 guys in your team, and number 1 is the most competitive and 20 is your least competitive guy, where does he rank on the ranking there? And then all of a sudden you say, well, yeah, he's on the just above top half competitive. Or you say, yeah, this guy, I'll tell you, he's our number 1 competitive guy. So yeah, it's I know as a young person, I think I even try to help my own kiddo right now with it a little bit. Is sometimes as a youngster, when you're competitive, it's almost can be construed as not that great at times, because maybe you're not a very good friend sometimes, or take things too far against your brothers or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think there's definitely a chip that if you have hyper competitiveness and you learn to kind of channel it, that's the biggest thing, right? Is kind of, controlling your emotion some, but and you want to win so bad, but you're figuring out, okay, obviously to win a cup in the playoffs, that's the most competitive thing for a hockey player, right? To try to win the Stanley Cup. But obviously you're as I try to teach my kids and different things along the way, it's, hey, when you're playing volleyball in the backyard with your buddies and your family or something like that, it might not be the worst thing to let them have a point or whatever if you thought it was out or something. So something that I had to learn along the way. So yeah, competitiveness is great and super important in pro sports, but I think it's also important for us to kind of learn how to manage that, so you maintain relationships and some of that other stuff too.
Sure. Yeah. From the people side. And even it can sometimes be construed as selfishness in the younger age group, I think, because, you start showing more emotions. Competitive guys are usually quite emotional. It comes out that way. So being able to channel it, I think, is important as well. But it is one of those things that I even see now that I don't think, I shouldn't say it's leaving. I don't know how to channel that, but the game just looks different to watch, the loose puck battles sometimes, the half wall battles, the net front battles aren't quite what they used to be. And I think there's a real opportunity for today's player and today's game to ratchet that up a little bit and to really like stand out from the crowd by showing that little extra grit.
Yeah. And it kind of brings you back, makes you think, Jason, of one of my favorite coaches I had was John Tortorella. And I saw him talking, I think it was probably a year or two ago. And he was saying, he was ticked off because he goes, I'm sick of guys like talking on the faceoffs or patting each other on the butt all the time or in warmups kind of goofing around or whatever. he goes, where's the hate gone? And whatever. That's not a great message maybe for kids in minor hockey or whatever, but in pro hockey, it made me laugh because Torts was referencing that, that kind of hyper competitiveness that kind of pulls you across. And I think that was one of Torts's greatest attributes. I got to play for him in Rochester in 95, 96 when we won the Calder Cup there. Barry Trotz was coaching in Portland, so two pretty darn good coaches that were coming up. But I think that's one of the biggest things that Torts instilled in us was just that, you're always competing for each other. You're not competing for yourself. You're competing for your team and your group there. And I think it's a huge thing that if a coach kind of puts that belief and trust in you and he kind of owns it and lives it himself, team kind of falls in line.
What does winning do for a group collectively, whether it's at the NCAA level or, the AHL level? I mean, NHL level, it's obvious, but those other leagues where guys are usually trying to get somewhere else, like what can that do for a group?
Yeah, I just think it gives you confidence as a person, right, to be part of a group like that. And I think also it just, people that are running teams, they're good hockey people. They're there for a reason, they're general managers or head coaches for a reason. And I think guys that are leaders of teams in those positions, they value great guys. They know what makes great teams. Like everybody that's won, or even if you haven't won, but you've been on a really good team, you realize the qualities that are in there. And so much of that is the selflessness and just accepting your role even when you want to do more, and just, those competitiveness traits, and just kind of having just a lot of good guys that care so much about the group. And I think when you win, I think everybody else says, oh, those guys, they must have lots of great guys in their team. So now the next general manager or coach says, oh, I'd like to have that guy on his team. That guy won a Calder Cup. Or obviously, I think one of the guys that I looked up to so much when I was coming up, we have a son on our team now, Jackson Keane, but Mike Keane. I always used to think, oh, why does he always get traded for at the deadline? Why are teams like, he's not the biggest stat guy or the biggest body guy, but he must be just an unbelievable person in the room and with his competitiveness to win that much. And everybody, just winning kind of builds and breeds confidence and more winning, it seems like. So I just think that attribute, when you're part of a great group, you learn yourself about, you kind of looking around at other guys and seeing the other guys are really good players. Like I'll reference a guy from my hometown there that we talked about before the show, Steve Junker. We were at this Calder Cup run, and Steve Junker came to our team a little bit late in the season, and he played really well. He's just a really good, solid two-way player. And then we got down into the playoffs, and he only dressed 10 forwards back then, and he was a healthy scratch. But, it's a long stretch of kind of sitting around until we won that thing on June 13th. But Steve Junker was, always super sharp in practice, always on the bike getting ready, always kind of positive influence around the room. So instead of a guy being kind of negative and sitting around, his only role at that time was to push from the bottom up in practice and how he trained and how fit he was and his attitude. And, Junks didn't get to play much in the playoffs very much, but when he was in, he went in and did a great job because he was ready and knew what was going on, and he was fit. And I just think that's a great form of leadership. It's just, whatever role you're given, you don't bitch about it, and you dig in and you do what you can. And I'll never forget that about, one among other guys that had a hard role, not a very fun role, but did it unbelievably and, still helped to drive our team.
I mean, the fact that you even mentioned that is so relevant, right? Like, how many years ago was that?
Yeah, that was 1996.
Right. So here we are 25 years ago, right? 24 years ago. And you're remembering a guy that wasn't in the lineup and how he was acting and what he was doing at the time and how it made a difference for your team. Like, that's the dots that players need to connect sooner than later, right? Because it's so special, right? And it does make a difference. And your actions leave clues too. I mean, if it is an individual based scenario, right? How can I move forward? And if that's what you're trying to do, like, sure, grab onto it, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. But you're also becoming an example for somebody else, right? You're also leaving messages for somebody else. And for you to have that memory, like, that makes me smile, because I think that's the part of it. I mean, that's just such a big part of it, is that it takes, and that's why we said earlier about what's so great about hockey, is that here's somebody who wasn't even in the lineup that was a part of it, in your opinion, and it made everyone else better, and somebody that you remember. And Junks is a heck of a guy and went on for a great career himself too. And the other thing about winning is people watch you longer and they want you on your team, right? People want winners. You can never get enough of those guys. Yeah. Sorry, you want to say something?
I was going to just jump in a little bit about that. Like, we referenced Scott Nickel and Jared Smithson, and they're two of the guys that are two of my favorite teammates over my career. And both those guys played lengthy periods of time in the American League and then end up becoming both longtime NHLers, which is extremely hard to do, as you know. And I think that says so much about those guys too. And they have those qualities, right? They're workers and they're unreal team guys. And because they just kind of battled and got above, they didn't make it because of their high-end skill level. They made it because of their will and their being great teammates and their work ethic and their discipline. And it's so good for young kids to hear those stories about, it's not just about how many points you have or and what role you're in. It's, you can build your name by kind of what you do on those day-to-day basis in those small moments.
And you know what? I think this is maybe a great segue, because I want to play something for you. I'm going to put this on. So can you see that right now?
Yep.
So for those of you not watching on YouTube, which is the vast majority of you, I wanted to cut here because I show a video clip from my interview with Jared Smithson to Dane Jackson. So that's what he is watching here. And the voice it's my voice, but it's my question to Jared. And you'll see why I played it. And I thought it would have an impact on Dane, as I'm sure it would have on anyone who would hear a fellow teammate or a fellow human speak so in such high regard for yourself personally. So check this out. Which is like, of your games played, give me the player that had the most impact on you in your locker room, whether that be from a skill level or from a human level or a leadership level. And then who was the most impressive player that you played against?
Wow. Yeah. Tough question there. I think for the player that kind of taught me the most, and a lot of guys would probably think NHL, but it wasn't. It was my first few years in Manchester. We had a captain, and you probably know him well, Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson was my captain down there, and that was my first taste of, this is a true professional, right? He was winding down his career. He had every reason to not empty the tank every night and to kind of show up late, or not late, but you know what I'm saying, not bring that passion, that energy. But he didn't. He was there for the young guys. He still battled. He still fought. He still played the game the right way. And when I got to play with him and see how he kind of conducted himself, that to me was a game changer. That's just someone that I really wanted to in a way model myself after, how he played the game. And he played along, had a good professional career and played a bit in the NHL, and just someone that really kind of hit home for me with him. As for
wow, that's humbling. That's pretty nice.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's kind of almost chokes me up a little bit.
I thought it might, which is why I wanted to play it for you, because I mean, and my reason for playing that is because, like, you always had an impact, like you talk about him doing the right things, but it takes sometimes somebody to show you the right things too.
Yeah.
And you don't even know the impact you're having sometimes. But then there's Jared Smithson in an interview that he might think you'll never watch, and you're the guy that he mentions as being a difference maker for him. I think that's pretty special.
That is. And I learned, you referenced, Jason, pretty cool about me getting to be a captain when I was 24, 25 in Syracuse. I went the next year to Rochester, signed as a free agent with Buffalo. And, Torts maybe as captain there. And they had Jody Gage there. There was a long-time guy. And So that was a little bit tough at times. And we went through a lot of kind of crap that year. We, at Christmas time, we were one of the worst teams in the league. And there was a lot of, Rochester had some good teams, and they had veteran guys there that had always kind of done it their way, which was a good way. They brought in some new guys like Dixon Ward and maybe Brian Holzinger and myself, some new kind of younger guys. And Torts is always the guy that kind of says, hey, I'm going to do it my way. And so we had a little bit of friction between kind of maybe the old guards and the new guys coming in. And it was a really, like, I watched, Dan Frawley and some of these old guys, like Doug Huda came in later to us and was just such a, came down and played in the NHL for a long time before, and then was just unbelievable leader and came down to help us win, and you go through all these kind of, sometimes you think about these winning seasons and you think, oh, it's just about, everything just comes together so easily. And it doesn't. It's usually shaped from real adversity when, we had some really tough meetings at Christmas where, I remember Tortorella just challenging us and saying, hey boys, what are you going to do? And we kind of got together in that room and kind of hashed out, and again, put our own kind of agendas behind us, whether there was the Roch guys kind of doing it their old style or the new guys thinking, oh, we're going to come in here and make this organization better. And it really wasn't either of that. It was, at the end of the day, it was saying, hey, we're all kind of here and we all better get on board, or we're not going to be perceived as very good teammates and leaders. And, those things about how you handle those kind of hard adversarial times, I think really kind of shape a person and shape a team. And there was good people, just help you win, because there's so many, like I talk about that in recruiting now, Jason, like there's kind of two parts of recruiting for me. If you're building a team, right, we all want really skilled, fast, great playmaking, smart players, right? But then you also want the guys that are just grit and glue guys, that when you're, in our building, if we're down 2-0 and we got 11,000 people in our building, it's pretty quiet and it's not a very comfortable place to be. When you go into that third period and like you look in, when you look at Troy Stetcher in the eye, or look at Drake Kajula in the eye, or look at TJ Oshie in the eye, like they're really good players, but they are just competitive and just dying to when you challenge them, to just their jaws sticking out and they can't wait to just say, all right, I'll fricking show you, Jackson. You're going to challenge me like that? You're going to say that to me? Like, and they just can't wait to get out the ice and show you what they really have, and that is such a cool thing about hockey, I think, is you have these guys that are good players, but they are just more solid people and bigger competitors than you can ever imagine.
Yeah. I mean, you can't have enough of those guys in the room, that's for sure. And I mean, one of the things, I wanted to talk with you about leadership and that comment from Jared. And just because it is a message that I have just on the platform that I have, is that you don't, one, you can make a difference. Sometimes you don't even know how much of a difference you're making. So how we carry ourselves is a big deal. And you don't necessarily have to have that letter, especially in youth hockey. I mean, kids are dying to get named the captain and who's the assistants. And I'm sure it's the same thing in your program. But there's always somebody looking up to you, regardless of where you're playing, regardless of whether you're 10, right, or 12 or 16. And I think that's cool. Like, and that's why I like telling those stories, because people impact people, and it can be negatively or positively, right? So who you surround yourself with and who you choose as role models is a big deal for athletes. And the fact that you were one consistently, it sounds like throughout your career, I've never heard a guy say one bad thing about you and you in the locker room. I mean, that's an awesome message, I just think, for kids to understand and to get.
Yeah. I read I keep an article in my office from Ryan Johnson, who works for the Canucks now.
And my first roommate, man, in pro hockey.
I knew Ryan, his older brother, and Greg and I were roommates in college. And so I knew Ryan as kind of a younger kid growing up. And all the brothers played at North Dakota. But I read this article that he wrote in they were doing some kind of thing where they were kind of writing articles in the province. And it was Ryan Johnson talking about when things aren't going your way. And he said, you have two choices. And you and I are both played with these guys. When things aren't going their way, or they're getting scratched, or they're not getting to play the role that they like, you can kind of mope around a little bit and kind of hope everybody's kind of looking at you and going, oh, Dane Jackson's really ticked off right now, or he feels he's getting cheated, and you can do that. Or Ryan said, you can either start grabbing guys and just helping other guys. When the things are going, you're very crappiest for you. You make a point of getting there earlier and helping somebody else out and just going out of your way to extend a hand to other people. And you kind of have two ways to kind of push your energy, right? In kind of that pouty, bitchy way, or just kind of when other guys are seeing that, oh, everybody knows if things aren't going great for you, if maybe you're getting a bit of a tough deal, and if they see you just absolutely just going the other way and just saying, all right, I'm going to get there earlier. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to show more. I'm going to do more for my teammates. And when your teammates watch you do that. So I pull that article out almost every year, just privately with a guy. And I just say, check this out. You got two ways to go. This is a guy who played about 750 games in the NHL and was a high scorer here at North Dakota. Then went on and made his career because he was a great penalty killer and role player. And it's just such a neat message that I know he learned from his dad, Jim.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so crazy how many connections we have. You were roommates with his past. Geez, that's a tragic story too. Poor Greg.
Yeah.
For me to be my first roommate ever was Ryan Johnson. So RJ and I go a ways back, and he's doing great. You have to share that article with me after. I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
For sure. Maybe that's a good segue into penalty kill, because you mentioned RJ being a great penalty killer. We also talked about Jared Smithson being a good penalty killer. Both role players that played a long time in the NHL because they were really good at owning a responsibility. What do you think makes a good penalty killer, and how do you go about identifying those guys?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, in my opinion, is kind of mentality. If you, again, it's not the most glamorous role, but if you really kind of choose to embrace it and think that it's an important part of your team, it kind of starts with that, in my opinion. You got to have good instincts and quickness and good stick and all that. But to me, it's just so much kind of workload and sacrifice. You got put in bad spots where you're going to try to clear a puck and you're exposed and a guy can come in and hammer you. You got to just be willing to get down and big and just, you got to want to eat a puck. And I think it's just so much about that kind of mindset and mentality to say, how important is this to me and to our team that I'm going to do a great job at this. I'm just going to do whatever I can. If it's for 24 seconds, flying out up and down the ice 4 times and blocking a shot and diving to get a puck out, if that's that important to you, I think it can lift a team and be important to everybody. But I think it's so much of it just kind of how you kind of perceive the importance of it and how hard you're willing to play at that role.
Do you believe at the college level, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your program at all or how you guys run it there, but do you believe in establishing roles like that where maybe you have your whatever, let's call it the old school top 6, or you have the guys that are your power play guys, and then you have these other guys that are committed to being penalty kill guys? Do you believe in that philosophy, or do you guys try and cross and make it more of a hybrid system?
Yeah, good question. We like to kind of try to give roles to guys so that they really dig into it, even though, TJ Oshie was an unbelievable penalty killer. So he was so, obviously he was a great power play guy for us too, but he was a great penalty killer, so was Johnny Taves. Those are some of the best guys we've ever had come through here, but they are great at kind of both sides of it. So you're obviously using those guys, but in general, I really like to try to find guys and give them chance, to give them opportunities to kind of, develop that role and develop that part to their game for sure. So there's kind of the idea that, if we're maybe down in a game, we're killing a penalty off in the third period, you might try to put out some more offensive guys that still have a mindset for it. But in general, yeah, we're trying to build roles for guys and make them feel real passionate about it and really kind of dig into the details of that role. And, find the smaller meetings you have with guys are when you get more give and take and you're talking with guys versus me just preaching. It's us together doing this, and you get a lot of buy-in, I think, when you have small groups and you have a penalty kill meeting with 5 or 6 forwards only, and we're gonna talk details with those guys and tell them how important they are and how we need this job done to win this upcoming game.
Yeah, I think I like that you touched on that there, because I think that that ability to own something as a player, a lot of times we don't get an opportunity to really take something with both hands and say, this is mine, this is what I want to do really well. And I think when a coach asks that of you and requests it and tells you how important it is, it facilitates buy-in, and I think a different level of accountability to that spot. So I'm sure your guys love it there when they get the opportunity to be told that they're going out. When back to your career and just being, I saw your stats and you played, I would call it a handful of games. I'm sure you wish you would have played more, but I'm sure you're proud of every one of them you got at the NHL level. What was it like for you trying to break into that league? And was there, was there anything you would redo again to try and establish yourself longer term?
Yeah, good question. I think, I was, just a borderline player. You have to, obviously, you got to be so good at a certain role. I think I was a pretty good player at different things. I wasn't great at anything, but you work hard. I think one of the things that I really respected early on when I got called up, and Pat Quinn was our coach, is he would, I was starting the fourth line, but if I was playing really well and other guys weren't, he would elevate me, and I'd play a shift with Trevor Linden or play in a higher role for a shift here and there. So I really kind of appreciated that Pat would see if you were bringing value or if you were really going that night. And I'm sure it's also to send messages to other guys that weren't playing very well, but I really kind of appreciated and respected that he would, he was a smart hockey guy and he could identify that, and he just wouldn't roll lines. He'd be like, okay, if this guy's going and another guy in the higher line wasn't, you would get more opportunity to get to play more. And I really kind of appreciated and, thought a lot of that. Like, hey, he's really watching everything I do on every little, how I'm practicing and how my first shifts are. And
right.
They really kind of, tune me in and kind of go, well, hey, if I'm really going, I'll get to play more. If I'm not, I'll play less, and I really kind of appreciated that side of things. As far as what you could do better, I don't know, you always kind of wonder that a bit. I know I did get to a point where when you first get called up, you're so nervous and you just kind of, worried about every play, where after a little while, you kind of get a confidence. You go, hey, I am what I am. I'm just going to go and try to be the best version of myself and play my game to a great degree. And if, guys come back from injury or whatever it may be, they trade for somebody and I got to go down, you kind of get at peace with that. At least I started to really just enjoy, hey, I'm going to go up and try to just, my litmus test is being the best player that I can be. And if you really, you can't really control other things outside of that about who's coming back from injury or if someone's maybe going to just outplay you or whatever. So I kind of got at peace with that, just kind of saying, hey, just go up and try to do your job well and, add value when you can. And that's really all you can control.
Because when you're wearing a letter like that at a young age, I find that interesting in and of itself, because there is something that's very helpful and supportive about being a C, right? Like, you are helping other guys and you're going out of your way to help other guys. Yet you're still in an environment yourself individually that you want to get to the NHL, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of an oxymoron in that sense, or it's hard for some guys to get their head around. Was there ever a scenario where you knew mentally that maybe like you weren't going to be an NHLer, like that you were an AHL guy and you were going to commit to being that best AHL guy that you could be?
Yeah, absolutely. I vividly know the point. You asked me earlier about a critical incident and I maybe didn't have a great answer for you, but I know this one. It was, I played 3 years with Van, played a little bit up with them and scored some points when I got up and did all right. And then that next year I played a little bit with Buffalo again, about the last 20 games of the season and did pretty well. I think I had about a half a point a game or something. And then I came back down and we won the Calder Cup. So in my opinion, I had been a really good kind of leader and on a great team in Rochester, and I'd done well in Buffalo that last stretch. So the next year I trained so hard and was so ready and really kind of felt that would be my chance to go up. And I played a couple exhibition games and kind of got cut right out of there. And I just kind of, at that moment, was really hard for me. But I remember calling my dad with tears in my eyes, kind of, even as a 25 or 26-year-old guy or whatever. And I think that was kind of the point where I'm going, you know what, I think maybe that's it. But again, then you have, like Ryan says, you have two choices, right? You can be kind of pissed off and be a negative energy guy, or you can say, hey, I'm going to try to, you don't even think about it that way, but I think you just got to build your career as far as, that's why I think I got to be a coach. Right? Because I started saying, hey, I'm going to start, really trying to help young guys. And I got to play longer because of it. I wasn't the greatest player at the end, but I think, some teams knew that I was would help mentor guys, which I think is such a big thing. There's only, as far as if I was running a team, I'd have some really good veteran guys surrounding my young Jason Podolans coming up, to try to help them and show them the way, and I think it's a huge deal. So it's, again, your choices about how you show up every day to the rink. You're going to show up really early and get some extra stuff and help other guys along the way, or you're going to just kind of slink through and barely earn your paycheck. So, and again, it's everything you do every day kind of leads to the places you get to.
I think it's a different level of passion too that you kind of see, and I think that, must have seen it yourself. Like some guys like hockey a certain way, but they don't like it other ways, you know? And I think for me, I had to go through that on a personal level too, because, you know, as we get older, as we change as a player, you know, I mean, some of the stuff that we could do, or we thought that we were, now we're not anymore, or maybe we're not in the league that we want to be. And you have to identify with what you're doing and really enjoy it still, or else it becomes drudgery, and it becomes a pain in the butt, and you become to be somebody that shouldn't be in that environment. So do you think that's just an underlying like passion you had for hockey, it just in and of itself, or was it something else more about you?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a really big guy about positivity, you know, just, you know, kind of sharing good energy with people and stuff. So, you know, I'm sure there was, you know, some days there where you kind of question it. And I kind of remember that there's that, you kind of have that reckoning you said about maybe when you shouldn't be doing this anymore or whatever. And there was some times where you do some soul searching over the summer and go, hey, if I'm going to do this, I want to, you know, be passionate and be enjoying it, not just playing just to, so I'm afraid to go out and do something else, get a different job, you know? But yeah, I think mainly that kind of, I really do love the game. I love competing. I think the biggest things I love is hanging out with the guys and competing. Those are my two favorite things, you know, about that kind of with the game, you know? And I think someone else also too is just kind of setting the culture. Like I've talked to a fair amount of guys that have played a long time, maybe in the American League, and maybe there's actually a fairly negative connotation about their careers or their times and stuff like that, you know? And I felt that I helped kind of drive cultures in the teams that I was in by saying, hey, like, we're here anyways, you know, like, obviously we wish we were up with the Buffalo Sabres or the Vancouver Canucks, but like, what are we going to choose to do here? And like, hey, let's organize every Sunday night. We're having potluck at my place, you know, or one day we're going to go out for lunch and some beers and shoot some pool, or, you know, play shuffleboard together. You know, we're going to make it the best we can and enjoy those relationships with the people around you, you know? So I think that's such a big thing. It's like your lot in life, you still shape, you know, you shape your day to day by how your attitude is going into it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, because me growing up, and probably yourself too, I didn't even know the American League existed. You know, I didn't even know what it was, right? Like I knew that there was one league to play hockey in and get paid for it, and that was the NHL, and that's where I wanted to be, right? And then you find out all these different leagues and all these different options to be able to play. And I think while guys are in it, gratefulness is such a big word, and I know it's starting to become more mainstream now, but there are definitely times when I look back that I wish I was more grateful for where I was at, and that, you know, whatever capacity that was, like getting paid to play hockey is such a privilege, and it's not a right, you know, and just to remind yourself of that, because even, you know, the dark days in Newfoundland when maybe I'm leading the league in goals and no one's calling me, and I'm thinking, you know, that sucks to be me, why me? Like, man, it's still pretty damn good, you know. And I think the more we can connect that to players, it makes us a better person when we show up at the rink too.
Yeah, great. That's a great message. And, you know, even now, sometimes, you know, here, like in North Dakota, like our team's a big thing in our whole state, you know, and when we're not doing well, it can get pretty heavy on young guys, and you still got to go into that room and talk to them and just say, hey boys, like, you know, this has not been our best season, and but we're still controlling things to the end about, you know, how we're going to practice today and our attitude. And there are still, you know, a ton of kids that would love to be in our spot, even though, you know, we're not a top ranked team in the country this year, but we still get to be here and come walk into this unbelievable rink and get to, you know, battle with a bunch of really good guys that care about each other. And, you know, there's still so much good. And yeah, your message of gratefulness is a great one.
When you start looking back at the coaches you had, and you've named a few, and my God, they're all like kind of pillars in and of themselves. You know, Pat Quinn, you mentioned Bruce Boudreau, you mentioned Tortorella, all these, you know, stops along the way, and now you are a coach. How much of those experiences impacted you with how you approach the players at UND?
Yeah, so much. Like, you know, there was always with Pat, there was just such an honesty, you know. I don't know, I guess we got time. I'll tell you this really neat story about the Pat Quinn. Is we were at the after 1 year when I got to play in the playoffs with the Canucks. We beat St. Louis in 7 games in round 1, and then we lost to Chicago in the next round. But the Griffiths family had us out to their home, beautiful home out in the water, and was kind of old school. It was staff, front office, and players. Everybody was kind of having this big meal and, having some beers, and just unbelievable night. And late night, I kind of went down and just took this gorgeous home in. I walked kind of down to the ocean, and I see there was somebody, it was pitch black, and there was somebody kind of smoking a cigar down on this beachcomber on this big log down there. And I think it was down a little ways, and I was kind of sitting there, and the guy goes, "Hey, who's that?" And I'm like, "It's Jackson." It was like, Jackson. It was Pat. And he said, come on down. And he fired up his big long stogie that he had and gave me a stogie. And he was like, I believe his general manager as well at the time. I think he was coach and general manager. And he said, he just grabbed me and he kind of talked to me like his son. And he said, "Jax, you're a good player." He goes, "I'd like to sign you as a depth guy, go down and be a good player in the American League for us. You said you've shown that you can come up and fill in and do a good job." But he's like, we're super good on the right side, and we got a really strong team right now. He goes, if I was your dad, I'd advise you to, go try elsewhere. He said, "I think you can play in the league if you're at your very, very best." But he goes, "On our team, you're behind other guys that are just not as good." And I just remember, like, what a classy, sharp, honest guy, and you just kind of go, that's a man right there. Just a neat man that cares about you as a person, not building depth in his organization. He just kind of just doing the right thing. And I always think of Pat Quinn in that way. I think of Tortorella, about him being so kind of fiery and so pissed off at you. But he also, if he was wrong, like he was sometimes he would just rip into us and say, "Jax, you didn't have your team ready to play tonight, blah, blah, blah." And then he'd be calling me and he's like, "Meet me at Starbucks at 7 a.m. We're talking about this, And he'd go, "I looked at the video and you guys were better than I thought, kind of. And, it's not just on you to have them ready. It's on me." Like, he had that kind of honesty that he'd give you shit. But if he thought he was maybe wrong, he would kind of take it himself, So I always respect so much of that, where coaches can just always be right? They can always say whatever they want. It's just, that's what's right. Where Torts, I think, had that honesty where he would be really honest and brutally frank with you and tell you when you were shitty. But he would also really had just an honest, kind of nice way about him, to the point where, after we won the Calder Cup and we partied it up in town for a few days, he actually lived in Buffalo. He would drive back and forth, and he said, "Hey, I'd like you to come by my house and, make you a meal." And because he didn't have any assistant coaches, if you can believe it, Podes back then. 1996, we had no assistant coaches. So he would bounce a lot of stuff off me, and I got to be really close with him because of that. And he had me over to his house to just have a great meal and drink some red wine. And his wife made us an awesome meal and stuff. And it was just, it was a real kind of closeness developed about just what a good man he was. People see Torts as this kind of fiery, and he can be kind of an ass in interviews sometimes. But when you get to know him, like, there's just so much humanity there. Such a good person, and you see him, how he treats his kids and his wife and stuff like that, and there's just so much kind of goodness there. And, and Bruce gave me the chance to start coaching. He kind of said, "Hey, you're not good enough to play for me anymore, but I'd like you on my staff," and there's just so much about Bruce where he's almost the exact opposite of Torts, but he's still a really good coach because he just makes it so fun to come to the rink every day. And he just empowers guys and makes guys feel positive, where if you screwed up, he wouldn't say, "Okay, Jackson, sit here." He'd be like, "Jax, you're up. You're going next shift again." And you're kind of going, "Holy crap, I just let our team down with a bad turnover that cost us." And instead of him, sitting you, he'd put you out on the next shift. And you just want to play so much harder for him again, So all the lessons you learn from all these guys are just, they're just invaluable that you try to pass on to your players and your kids and your friends.
Yeah, that's did you ever feel like you were collecting a database while you were going through it, or is it just sort of one of those things you sponge it up and then you just sort of it becomes a little piece of you?
Yeah, I wish I would have had a diary and written more stuff down. Kind of, I'm sure I think I remembered a lot, but I wish I would have probably documented more. But yeah, I guess all our experiences shape us, and all the people we get to deal with shape us, and you feel just so lucky. Like you referenced right away, Jason, is all the relationships you have. I don't remember, I think I played about 800 games almost in the American League, and I don't remember a lot of them. You remember the playoffs, you remember your awesome teammates, And you probably remember the parties and the fun stuff you did more than all those games along the way or the big goals you maybe scored. Like that's my memory. How I go. You remember the awesome people, the great coaches, and just the good experiences you had.
Yeah, I echo that for sure. I can't remember too many of the games or too many of the goals, but I do remember the people. I remember the fun stuff away from the rink too, and remember the relationships. And this podcast has been a blessing for me with that. Just getting me back in contact with a lot of these good guys that you lose contact with, and it gives you used to have the conversations. I would do a disservice to this if I didn't ask you. I know we talked a little bit earlier. We won't dive into it, but Mitchell Miller has been a topic of conversation on a national level after he was drafted there by Arizona. Spotlight gets turned on him, and he was a part of the UND program and is no longer there. I just thought I would give you an opportunity, if you would, to just speak on him. And because one of the things I've been saying, I'll just let you know on my own platform and just from reading the news and what's happened. And I don't think we need to debate the severity and the lack of, integrity it was of what he did when he was 14. I mean, I've tried to put that in a different spot and just trying to see, what is this guy like now? Because I think that's really important to the conversation, because one, in Canada, you wouldn't even know what he did when he was 14. And two, people should be allowed to have some path to redemption. So, I mean, you being around him this year as a part of the program, what was your experience with Mitchell? Did you feel he was living up to his end of the bargain?
Yeah. Good question. Obviously you're exactly right. Like, Mitch had some bad mistakes in his past, but also what I saw from him when he was here was, and it was a fairly short period of time. He was just a regular guy. I think he was probably a lot like you or I growing up, just kind of he came to work and he was a good teammate and good kid there. Don't ever diminish like what happened in the past is not good and disappointing for sure. But, as part of recruiting him, and looked into it, I tried to talk to a lot of, people and teammates and teachers and stuff like that to try to find out, like, I will say that I don't think it was a systemic thing that happened over a long period of time. That's not, in my opinion, that's not what happened, So we kind of said, hey, we wanted to give a kid a second chance and give him the chance to kind of, redeem and do the right things. And he was doing that. I think he'd really, since that time, in my opinion, he'd lived a good life and been a solid citizen and kind of earned his chance to have some success in his life. So, it is definitely a tough situation. And, I really hope that he gets a chance to, because, there's guys like, people that have had some mistakes along the way, whether you're coaching in the NHL or whether you're the best golfer in the world, you've had some pretty tough things happen to some people. And I believe, you get a chance to try to, have a positive change. It's going to the Ryan Johnson thing and say, what do you do now? Right. You feel sorry for yourself and do more negativity, or do you try to kind of help other people and start influencing change in a positive manner? And, I'm going to try to keep in touch with Mitch and, help him do the latter, because I think he's got lots of good in him and lots of good hockey. But most importantly, just kind of facing down this real hard adversity he's going through, and try to mentor him and help him to be a good man going forward.
I think that's amazing. I was actually going to ask you that, like if you did have a message for Mitch and whether you were still talking with him, if you were to give him some word of advice right now that would maybe apply to others, like what would that message be right now?
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of that old thing about just keep stacking up good days, right? You do the right things and that's, you build your brand from here. His brand is tarnished right now, right, in a pretty bad way. And who among us that have kids that are 14 years old go, oh my God, I hope my kiddo would never, we say, oh, it wouldn't put himself in that situation. But a lot of us make really dumb decisions, even though we're pretty good people, and you just really hope that he can kind of try to shelf that and try to start, in general, people are pretty open-minded. He's been knocked down pretty darn hard, and, he can't really do much more. I don't think, you apologize.
Yeah, I totally appreciate you saying that, and just in the circle, and you guys are obviously in the eye of the tornado there, and I'm sure that it's coming at you from all different angles. But just in like, I live in British Columbia, right, and there's people talking about it here,
Yeah.
and I think most people, the majority of people, read the headline, and it's quick to judge, and it's really quick to judge because it's that the media type of headline that I hate right now, right? That it's just that flash bait, and you read that, and you have this instant reaction to it. But that's why, like, when I dug in and when I heard what his coach in the NHL said, when I heard what even the head coach in UND said, I was like, you know what? I think someone's got to be able to speak for this guy at least a little bit, because that part of the story needs to be told. So I think it's good that, I mean, I'm thankful for you to saying that. I'm sure Mitch is thankful for you just to recognize that. And, I hope, given the fact that, if he is being a good guy and if he's stacking the good days, like you say, that he does get an opportunity to play, because everyone deserves a second chance. So thanks for sharing with that, Dane.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could finish here with just, what do you think as far as the level of where you're at now? Like UND, you're not the head coach there. You're the associate coach, like associate head coach. Is that the right title right now?
Yeah.
Is that something that you like? Do you for one day, like, where are your goals? I guess is what I'm saying. Where are your dreams right now as far as Dane Jackson is concerned?
Yeah, good question. There's been a lot of times where, I guess I'll start at the beginning. I just absolutely love my job. It's at such a level where you get to work with really pretty high-end athletes, physically really good players, and also a lot of really sharp kids. Like we get to be like Pat Quinn, we get to be GM and coach. So I know in pro hockey you don't get to do that. You just get to coach, and that can be tough at times, where we get to kind of set the culture and pick the players and coach them how we want. And if we do well, good on us. And if we don't, we have no excuses. We can't point at anybody else. So that's something that I really love about this job, is we get to build the whole thing. I get to go out and kind of find these athletes and go recruit them, and then get them here, coach them up, and make a great team. It's such a great level because you are kind of you're shaping their lives. I think there are guys that are coming in here at 18 years old, and I know I had a hell of a lot to learn at 18. And I think your brain still develop until you're about 25. I think so. I think there's that huge chance to really affect kids' lives. So I really appreciate that whole part of it. Having said that, there's times, it's usually when I go to the NHL draft, Jason, and you see all these guys along the way, and sometimes they don't say it in a bad way, but they're, oh, you're still at North Dakota, or you're not the head coach, and I'm fine with that, and the fact that, hey, would I like to be the head coach here someday? Absolutely. Had chances to go other places and do other things. But I just, it's twofold. It's that I just love this place and feel we get to influence a lot of kids in a great way. And, second thing is when you get to be in the game and have some solid life around, where you're, my wife's from North Dakota and her mom and dad live here, and we got 3 kiddos that are, I'm gone a lot with recruiting and coaching. And when they can be in a great environment and have grandma and grandpa helping to take them to games and stuff like that, and it makes you feel pretty good when you know that your kids are growing up and having an awesome experience. I love my job. I love the guys that I work with, and really feel proud about what we do here at the University of North Dakota. So there's a lot of things that go into it versus, just, oh, could I have a higher stature in my title or pay grade maybe, but there's it's a big question sometimes that you look in yourself and say, what's most important? Is it most important that I maybe have a head coach title, or versus all those other good things that go into your life decisions?
Yeah, I was talking with Brad Larson about that, and I mean, he's you mentioned Torts in such a great light there, which I think is maybe unfamiliar for some listeners to hear, because he's projected kind of a little bit differently. And Brad Larson, I mean, it completely echoed that, and he said, he's there willingly and by choice right now. Like, there is other opportunities and there has been other things. And yes, he wants to be a head coach, but he just absolutely loves where he's at, and he loves the responsibility that Torts has given him. He loves the ownership that he has of certain areas. He loves being around Torts and being able to learn more. So yeah, I mean, environment matters, I guess, in other words. I mean, it's not always about the title or the next best thing or the bigger paycheck. So I mean, like where you're at, there's something to be said for that. And I definitely won't judge assist. I think that's an amazing scenario anyways. I mean, to be in that and that gratefulness word that we used before too, right? That's a pretty awesome spot to be in with a pretty great responsibility of molding these young minds that are coming through UND. So thanks, man, for everything. I really appreciate you hanging out with here. We're at the 90-minute mark, this magical 90-minute mark that we try and stop it at. So any advice for these young guys out there, anything to close with that you haven't really touched, maybe haven't touched on already, or anyone coming up, like what how could it be the best player they can be?
Yeah, I think just enjoy the journey. To me, it's not about just getting to the mountaintop. It's about enjoying the battle and the grind every day with your teammates and coaches and stuff as you're going, because that's really what I think the good stuff's all about, is the struggle and emerge and the battle along the way, and and enjoy the little moments. And hey, it's great to play in the NHL, but I think we're all going to get old and have other jobs and stuff like that. And I think biggest thing is enjoy the people and take it all in when you're going through it. And some of the hard stuff is what is making you the best.
Yeah, enjoy the people. I love that aspect of it, because they're going to help, and there's going to be the things you remember too. So take advantage of those people. Well, thanks, man. I'll keep you on here after we press stop. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing all that great stuff with the listeners about all the things you learned and all the people you helped, and how we can all do our part to help others when either the going is good or when the going isn't good. Like you said, sometimes that's the decision that RJ says.
Appreciate you having me on, Jason. You do a great job, and it was fun being on here.
Oh, thanks very much. So thank you so much for sticking around till the end with Dane Jackson. I appreciate you listening, appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Really get a feel for the fabric of what Dane is about and what he kind of really established his entire career on, which is, hard work, commitment to others, selflessness, and mentorship. You can hear it in his voice, everything he talks about, stacking one day on top of the other, make your coach trust you, how you're going to do that, what he took away from his other coaches with integrity and respect and honesty, and all these things. He's just kind of been a sponge throughout his career, it sounds like, and has just built himself into this, pillar of respect, I'll say. It's not every day you get people that are going to go out of their way to say nice things about you, or to specifically remember an impact that you had on them. And it's obvious that Dane is that type of person, because it's happened. I mean, I haven't forced these conversations, and people just keep telling me what a great guy Dane Jackson is, and I think we got a feel for that here today. So Dane, if you are listening, thank you so much. I don't want to pump up your tires too much. I know you're probably turning red right now because you're such a humble guy. You walk around with so much humility, but maybe sometimes it's good to celebrate the great traits that you have, and to acknowledge them, because I know you've made a great difference for a lot of people that you've been able to touch and have had an impact on. So we thank you for that. And to all the other mentors and role models out there, just remember, we are all mentors and role models. There's somebody looking up to us. I've said that time and time again. We can make a difference for people, and it is that human element that really stitches the fabric of hockey together and makes it such a great game. So thanks again for sticking with me, and until next time, play hard.